One drop of blood promised 240 tests. That was the pitch that raised almost $1 billion. But behind the lab wall, that drop went somewhere else, into somebody else's machine. The billboard said one drop. The back room told a different story. For 12 years, the smartest people in America never checked. Nobody ran the one test that mattered. The clock was already ticking. I am Archie. I keep the files nobody wants reopened. This one is stamped file number 3, Theranos. A drop of blood, a room full of legends, and a lie that outran them all. Open it with me. In 2003, a 19-year-old walked out of Stanford. Her name was Elizabeth Holmes. She had one idea and no chemistry degree. She wanted to shrink a whole blood testing lab into a single finger prick. No big needle, no fear, just one tiny drop. Imagine ending the fear of needles for every kid in America. That was the dream she sold. She called it real-time cures, then renamed it Theranos, therapy plus diagnosis. Real-time cures. Even the first name promised the impossible. The pitch was simple enough for anyone to repeat. Prick a finger, fill a tiny tube, and skip the big lab entirely. Doctors, patients, and politicians all wanted it to be true. Investors loved the story. Money followed the story, not the science. Early cash came from big names. Venture legend Tim Draper, then media titan Rupert Murdoch. Not one of them had seen the machine work. Keep that in mind. By 2013, she struck a deal with Walgreens. Blood tests inside the drugstore, right next to the toothpaste. Walgreens signed before anyone truly checked the machine. Then the number arrived. $9 billion. That is the price of a major sports team, built on a device the company had never proven. In 2014, Forbes crowned Holmes the world's youngest self-made woman billionaire. The black turtleneck became her uniform, and the covers kept coming. Every magazine wanted the same photo. Young, brilliant, changing the world. Investors handed over about $945 million, nearly all of it on her word alone. That much could have bought dozens of other startups outright. For a while it worked. The covers, the billions, the standing ovations, all real. But here is the part most people miss. Who guarded that money? Look at the board. Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, William Perry, Sam Nunn, James Mattis, a 4-star general, 2 secretaries of state, a defense secretary, a retired admiral. Count the resumes. 2 statesmen who shaped the Cold War, a war hero, a bank chief, and doctors who understood blood testing. 1. When a former Secretary of State vouches for you, who dares ask for proof? They built the perfect boardroom to run a country. Nobody built one to check a lab. These were the guardians. Their names made the company feel safe, and that trust, not the technology, kept the whole thing standing. Until one young employee decided to read the numbers himself. His name was Tyler Shultz. His grandfather was George Shultz, the same statesman on the board. Tyler was 23, and he took the job excited. Then he saw the test results. They wobbled. The same blood sample gave different answers on different days. Sick patients could get the wrong number and the wrong treatment. Every day the machine failed, real patients kept trusting their results. Tyler raised his hand inside the company. Nobody listened, so he drove to his grandfather's house to warn the family. He knocked, expecting a quiet talk. Instead, 2 company lawyers stepped out of a side room and cornered him. Tyler has said the pressure nearly broke him. Legal bills near $500,000, and his parents offering to sell their house to pay them. For months, George Shultz stood by Holmes instead of his own grandson. The 2 stopped speaking and only made peace years later. Tyler has recounted that George told him the devices were already saving lives in medevac helicopters in Afghanistan. They were not. Then came October 2015. A reporter named John Carreyrou put a story on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. He did not guess. He listened to 4 former employees who had watched it happen from the inside. His finding was simple and deadly. The Edison machine could run only a handful of the 240 advertised tests. The rest. Theranos watered the blood down and ran it on ordinary machines bought from other companies. Picture a menu with 240 dishes and a kitchen that can cook maybe a dozen. The rest get bought next door and plated to look homemade. For the first time, the public heard what employees already knew. The front page hit Silicon Valley like a thunderclap. The company answered critics with lawyers, not repairs. Days later, the FDA revealed its own inspection. The little blood container, the nanotainer, was an unapproved medical device. Of all 240 tests, exactly one had FDA clearance. One. And while the walls cracked, what were the two people at the top doing? Texting. Holmes and her partner Sunny Balwani signed off as Tiger and Tigress. On the same phones, prosecutors later found plans to threaten the whistleblowers, trying to warn the world. Sweet nothings on one screen, lawsuits on the next. By now, one man on that famous board was quietly doing the math. James Mattis, the general, saw that every fact he trusted came from exactly one person, and she had been telling him a story, a return to that single drop of blood. In January 2016, the government stopped pretending. Federal health inspectors hit the Theranos lab with the worst label they own: immediate jeopardy. Think of a red sign nailed to an emergency room door. Close now, patients are in danger. The lab's clotting test, the one that guides blood thinners, kept failing. Get that wrong and people bleed. That is not a paperwork problem. That is life and death. That July, the government shut the lab down and banned Holmes from running one for 2 years. In 2018, the SEC charged her with an elaborate years-long fraud. The SEC said no company gets a pass on fraud just for being young, private, or famous. She settled, paid a fine, and gave up control of her company. Then federal prosecutors filed criminal charges. Wire fraud. The company dissolved. The trial opened in 2021. General Mattis took the stand for the prosecution. He testified that Holmes had been his sole source of information about the company. A decorated 4-star general had no way to check a single slide she showed him. Then Holmes admitted something herself. She had pasted the logos of Pfizer and Schering-Plough onto her own reports, without asking either drug company. Investors read those reports and thought the drug giants had blessed the technology. They had not. Investors had trusted a story. The story had no proof underneath. Holmes also testified that she had been raped at Stanford and that Balwani later controlled and abused her. Balwani has denied all allegations of abuse. Prosecutors answered with those Tiger and Tigress texts. The jury's job was fraud, not that. The jurors argued for more than 50 hours. This time, no board of legends could save her. In January 2022, the verdict came. Holmes, guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors. Months later, a second jury found Balwani guilty on all 12 counts against him. The judge called it a tragedy. Holmes, he said, was brilliant, a big thinker whose gifts turned into greed. He sent her to prison for 11 years and 3 months. Balwani got 12 years and 11 months. The court found he had put patients at risk too. The court ordered them to repay $452 million. Money the victims will almost surely never see. Holmes reported to a Texas prison in 2023. The $452 million is still owed, and the victims have mostly stopped waiting. In February 2025, a federal appeals court threw out her appeal. The judges called her vision nothing more than a mirage, built on half-truths and outright lies. That May, the court refused to look again. Only the Supreme Court is left, and it almost never knocks. The dream of one painless drop was always just that, a dream. So why did Theranos really collapse? Not because one woman lied. Companies survive lies every day. It collapsed because the people paid to check her, the generals, the statesmen, the billionaires, checked her name instead of her machine. Trust is a signature. Proof is a test. Theranos sold the first and skipped the second. A famous name is not evidence. A handshake is not an experiment. Ask for the data. Every time, no exceptions. The Guardians shook hands, and nobody ran the experiment. Close the file. Next time in the archive, another empire, another perfect story, another room full of clever people who forgot to ask the one hard question. I'll keep the light on.